Hello everyone, my name is Piers Ridyard and I have another roundtable with Jeremy and Adam. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about why developers and entrepreneurs are going to flourish on Radix. So let's start off with this idea of time to market. This is a really important concept when a developer or an entrepreneur is thinking about building on a platform. What is it about Radix that you think is going to improve time to market? Let's start with you, Adam.
The big one for me is that the way you intuitively think about an application working is how you can build in Radix. So The example I always love using here is Uniswap. So you say to someone what Uniswap does, how it works, a simple swap, token A, go over there, token B comes out. It's simple in how you think about it. But in Ethereum or Ethereum virtual machine based scenarios where you're doing it all message based, that is not how you build it at all. And you basically have to unlearn what you think it's going to be, which is something that is really time consuming, and you have to think in a bad way differently. Whereas in Radix, because it works and that you build the way it intuitively feels to be built, it means that you can then make more complicated things, you can build things faster, and more importantly, or just as importantly, you can build things more securely.
Okay.
Not only that, but I think the offering we are going to have around blueprints and royalties is going to be a big accelerator for time to market, because there'll be repositories of code that developers and entrepreneurs can come on, use. They can take advantage of that. They know it's battle-tested technology, so that will help them for building production-grade dApps. But for people who just want to build those components, there's an opportunity for them to monetize their knowledge, their intellectual capital there. So there'll be a flourishing ecosystem of tools, and we've been focusing on day one on enabling the people who are going to build the dApps. And one of the things that we've done is created this capability for we can't do anything. For creating this ecosystem of blueprints and the royalty system so that entrepreneurs and developers can get to market faster. And that's going to be really important for them.
Yeah, I think that people don't really understand, or it's very few people have really dove into these ideas of the layers of a developer ecosystem. Because when Ethereum first came out, the first things that people started to try and build were these immensely complicated smart contract systems that ultimately didn't really work very well. And then there was this long period in which it was just tool building. Like, people built these really difficult systems and they also built these tools along the way. Gnosis is a great example of that. Gnosis was actually is a prediction market. It was prediction market, but they needed to build this way of being able to manage money more effectively around multi-sig, and so they created the Gnosis Vault. That was sort of like an offshoot of the wider tool set they needed to be able to create these things. And people underestimate how much work is required to sort of build complexity. Like like each step is a foundational step to the next. And what I think is really interesting about this layer in Radix of blueprints and royalties is really focusing on that bit. It's going, look, not every developer actually wants to be an entrepreneur. Not every developer wants to end up building the next Uniswap, the next, Aave. Some people just want to create the bits that make it possible, or really enjoy creating those tools that make it possible. And we were like, what if you could design that into the protocol? What if you could create a system that allowed people to make tools that made it possible for you to then empower other people to create these applications? But most importantly, what if you could get paid from doing that?
You think there's now that you're talking about it, there's kind of a very handy real world analogy. I mean, there are companies that make hammers and power saws and screwdrivers, and they monetize that. They don't go out and build the houses and build all the, the apartment buildings. They're people who specialize in that. So as a visionary who sees where this is going, you have the opportunity to play and monetize and be profitable at any point along that value chain, from the simplest tool all the way to the most complex dApp.
I love that analogy as well, because just like tools, not everything is the power screwdriver, which is used everywhere. Sometimes you get a very specific tool for a very specific job, and you end up with like maybe a handful of people who do it, but you've just like quartered the time it takes them to do their specific thing,
Right.
up their productivity hugely. And the easier you make to take that sort of thing to market, the more people that gets in the hand of, which has that network effect to create better dApps, better products that other people are going to build with that as well.
Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of this goes back to the philosophy of Radix, right? Which is like, we are tool builders. We are there to make other people successful. The whole point of the public ledger is so that other people can get to market as quickly as possible and build the things that we think is going to be the future of DeFi and the future of Web3. And we also realized that we couldn't build all of the tools. So what is a way of creating a system within the Radix ecosystem that allowed the people who like being tool builders the opportunity to be successful as well? So I think that sort of time to market thing is, there's multiple levels to it. It's not just, can you build an easier dApp, right?
Right, which is obviously super important, but time to market has multiple components, not just the tools. I think another thing, I mean, over the past couple of years, we've spoken to thousands of developers and plenty of entrepreneurs, and you know what their single biggest problem is. I mean, I don't have to explain it to you. Finding talent. So when you think about the inputs in building a successful company or product, it's not just all the tools. That's great, but if you don't have people who can actually know how to use the tools, and if the tools are super complex and require years of training, that's going to be a real problem for you. But if you have people that say, oh, I can understand how to use this tool with relatively training, that's going to be a very powerful accelerator for getting to market quickly.
Yeah. I think very few people really realize that although there's 20,000 smart contract developers sort of in the market approximately today, there's about 500,000 who have tried being smart contract developers and like failed for whatever reason. They found the tools too difficult, they found it too difficult to code, they found it too frustrating. And the number one thing that we saw when we went and spoke with DeFi projects was our biggest problem is talent. It's not capital. It's not finding sort of users during the hype of like DeFi summer. It was, we just can't hire quickly enough because there isn't enough people coming into the industry. So that ability to unlock that with Scrypto and the Radix engine, I mean, I think that's going to be game changing.
I think it's going to be massive. And there's also opportunities for developers outside of just smart contracts alone. So one of them that really excites me is using the transaction manifest for stitching together different applications.
Right.
So a really good one for that is anyone who's used Zapper.fi. I remember in DeFi something like, when's Zapper.fi going to add this thing? When are they going to create a connection between these two dApps? And it was always, well, it'll take time because we've got to build a smart contract for it. We've got to deploy it and test it and make sure it's secure, which again, the team there did an amazing job. They were releasing stuff super fast, but it still took time. Whereas in Radix, you can do all of those things just with the transaction manifest. And so suddenly even something of like, it takes days to weeks becomes like hours to go and do this, which not only for developers being able to create great experiences for their users, but every user of the network then has new ways to go and engage. You get more composability between and interoperability between different dApps, which again creates more activity, more opportunity, more things for developers and entrepreneurs to go and leverage even further to grow the ecosystem as a whole.
Well, I think you touched on a really important point there, which is another component of building a successful dApp or a successful business is product market fit. So time to market's great, but if you don't have like a market there, then it doesn't really help. Even if you found the talent, but because of the way we've architected the stack, you have the ability to iterate much more quickly. Like your Zapper.fi example is great, but if it takes you weeks and your competitor can get it done in days, that's going to be a problem. Yeah. So the fact that you can start to iterate and evolve towards product market fit, because every entrepreneur knows you're not going to get it right the first, second, even third time. Right. So you need to be able to accelerate that process.
Yeah, I think the thing that I always say is like, I want Radix to be your unfair advantage. I want Radix to continually be the thing that allows you to outcompete other people just by getting out of your way. Like, and I think there's a great example. It's quite a deep example of this ability to stitch together different applications. But like, one of the things that I thought was really interesting is there's this idea of network effects that people talk about, right? Which was when the internet came out, it was how many nodes on the network were able to communicate with each other that gave you the square of that was the value of the network, right? Metcalfe's law. With DeFi, what I saw was more the number of applications that could be composed with other applications times by the value of the capital in the ecosystem gave you that exponent, because that ability to be able to compose together. And if you can do that by default without needing to deploy a new smart contract, which you have to do on every other platform. If you want to compose Uniswap with Aave, you need a smart contract in between to be able to do that. On Radix, that's just gone away with the transaction manifest. That means that ability to have that exponent is suddenly much higher, because now there's an unlimited, it's basically, factorial number of ways you can compose everything together. And that's just another one of those low level of things that unblocks.
What was that law you said again?
Your
one.
My one.
Ridyard's law.
Ridyard's
Do you
law.
want to Piers' law or Ridyard's law?
I think Ridyard's law.
I think Ridyard sounds better.
Ridyard's law.
So what's Ridyard's law?
Yeah, exactly.
Ridyard's law of DeFi product market fit.
Yeah.
Of DeFi value networks. So from the point of view of unblocking composability, unblocking developers being able to sort of get to product market fit, unblocking time to market, unblocking sort of talent. There's also one thing that I think is critical, which is unbottlenecking,
right.
Scalability.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most frustrating things that we saw going back to DeFi Summer and even on other platforms is that, entrepreneurs who take the risk, who go out and build things, are actually hindered by the network itself, whether it's congestion, whether it's gas fees, whether it's a network going down because it's unreliable. Those are big issues. So if you are an entrepreneur, going to your investors and say, hey, I'm going to build my dApp on a platform that has a roadmap for unlimited scalability forever, that's a pretty compelling offer,
right.
I would think.
Right.
And it also means that users can move more easily between dApps when there's opportunities. Like even personally in DeFi Summer, there were times when I'd see a cool thing I wanted to go and try out, and I'm like, I don't want to unwrap from somewhere else, because by the time I paid 4 or 5 transaction fees to get back to the base token that I need to go and build back in, you could easily wrap up multiple thousands of dollars of gas fees, which again, as an entrepreneur or as a developer, you don't want to be stuck in that situation. People are like, I'd love to come and use your dApp, Jeremy, but I'm going to sit here in the one I'm not that happy with because it'll just cost me too much to move.
Right.
So when Radix has been thinking about sort of which things to focus on first, you talk a little bit about sort of this. We talk about roadmap. We talk about the long-term view. So how did the order of things come about, and why are we thinking about doing things in that order?
So in terms of the rollout of the go-to-market or from the technology?
Yeah, both.
So from the go-to-market perspective, in my view, a layer 1 network like DeFi is a multi-sided marketplace, similar to things like YouTube or any other creator-user balance. And you need to keep both of those sides balanced.
Right.
On the long picture. And both of them need to have an easy route to keep growing, and the network effects that exist between them extrapolate very, very quickly if success is there. And as long as there's nothing that's going to put the brakes on that, then you can get very, very large very, very quickly. And the starting point of that is, how do you bootstrap each side efficiently? And so a big part of our focus in Radix in the last year or so during...
What are the two sides?
So the two sides are users and capital, and dApps and developers. And users and developers are a proxy for capital and dApps.
Right.
And obviously, to get capital to come in, we bootstrapped that with the Olympia network when that came out in the summer of 2021.
Right.
That was the first chance for people to start bringing their first assets over, staking to the network. Great, we've got a bootstrap area there. Then with Scrypto going into early access in December 21 was, okay, we want to get these tools in developers and entrepreneurs' hands as soon as possible.
Right.
Start building. And as Jeremy says, it's 132 already announced projects.
Right, and that's actually grown like 30% in the last month.
Yeah, 30% in 2 months.
In 2 months.
Yeah.
And so we want to get these tools up, because ultimately all the bootstrapped users and capital we've already got, plus the people joining really quickly, and I expect to be joining quickly as we approach the Babylon upgrade, is giving them things they can go and start building on. And especially with something like DeFi, is everything's intertwined.
Right.
Like as you get more collateralized lending positions and more collateralized lending applications, then you're going to get more arbitrage happening on dexes, but they need more dexes to go and arbitrage between. And so suddenly everything starts spinning up and you get more and more and more.
Right.
And as that starts spinning up, I think to have a successful network, it's about bootstrapping those things. And it comes back to what we were saying earlier, having the right tools and giving the tools to the people who are building these businesses, building these projects, because they're the people who we want to be successful.
And we're already seeing the beginnings of that flywheel started. I mean, these 132 projects, they're not just sitting there doing nothing, right? There's actual value going through them on the orders of millions of dollars through dexes, through CDEXs, you know, in NFT marketplaces. I mean, there's actual transactions happening, you know, and so the entrepreneurs are starting to see business models take shape in real time. And it's not just vaporware, it's real stuff.
I think there's a really important extra component here as well, which is it's not just the tools, it's also the community, right? And like the thing that I think Radix has been focused on a lot over the last year or so has really been the developer community, right? Like because Scrypto, we knew Scrypto needed to go through several stages of feedback, like you build a proper product, right? Get product feedback, but at the same time, you have to have that community. The community has to feel welcoming. It has to feel supportive. It has to feel like somewhere that you want to hang out because everyone's kind of working their way forward. So, you know, what do you think is most impressive about the community that we've built so far?
Other than it being really welcoming, friendly, and everything else that you'd expect from a Radix community, for me, it was the dev swarm events or the dev days we did, and specifically the first one. And what really impressed me with that is there's something magical about sitting there watching the live streams from, I think we had 3 or 4 different cities in Europe, each running this workshop day. And it was this with people coming along who'd never used Scrypto or only basically looked at it and being taught how to build something actually functional in a day. And seeing, I think it was about 200-300 people in total, all in a physical room, in a physical space, coding Scrypto together. Is just wonderful.
Yeah, our first dev swarm was 5 locations and it was 250 people in total. For the first one of just going, and I think this was really interesting as well, which is going along these lines of, if you've never touched Web3 before, it's a really easy, like Scrypto is an incredibly easy starting point.
And the second dev swarm we did as well, like the premise of what people could build was really cool. It was like, oh, have you heard about NFTs? Don't kind of get the hype, don't know how you'd use this. Well, come along to this event, we'll teach you about that. And by the end of it, you will have built, the challenge was to build a full NFT marketplace or NFT sales dApp. And people were doing that, from picking up Scrypto for the first time to leaving that one-day event having a component that they could go and show and use. And that is incredible. Like, you could never get something like that in Solidity.
No.
Yeah, well, it's also fun, not only the newcomers to the developer world, but the people who've been in Web3.
Right.
You know, as our CTO, Russ, will say, once you've started coding on Scrypto, everything else is just unacceptable.
Right.
You know, and so they have these, and once they start to understand the logic and the elegance and the intuitiveness of it, it's like the light bulb goes off. And that's just a really powerful validator, especially when new people come into the space and they'll talk to the more seasoned vets who'll say, yeah, this is some good stuff you've got going here. I mean, my personal favorite line of all this is, we were talking to one of the top venture capitalists in the entire space, and he said Radix has pound for pound the best community in all of crypto. And you know, that's what you need to be successful, to have a successful ecosystem.
Right. And I like, apart from the 132 projects that are already building, what else have you guys seen that sort of points to the fact that people are building real things?
So, I mean, one of the big ones is there's some applications that are already going live. So even before smart contracts are brought in Q2 2023, with the Babylon upgrade, people have had such demand that they're building interest, they're building sub-communities. dApps have got people already joining them, already getting involved. And some have even gone live on their own servers as like an interface because people so wanted to try this thing, and they're like, we'll get up and running then. And that's getting actual volume through them. It's getting people actually using them, and they're doing their own marketing. They're getting
some of them have listed their tokens on exchanges.
Right. But have we been doing anything else? Have there been challenges or anything like that?
Yeah, so we've been doing Scrypto challenges. And again, this is amazing. So again, my personal thing on many of these is the number of people who only got started using Scrypto. Like, I believe there's two. I won't name them here, but there was two people who won 2 of the Scrypto challenges, which was for about 5,000 XRD or something, $5,000 worth of XRD. And they're like, yeah, I got involved with this. I tried programming in the past, but I'm not a professional programmer. And then I was like, oh, I'll have a go with Scrypto. And I got it. It kind of made sense. And then I saw the challenge and I was like, oh, I'll take part because it'll be fun. There's other fun people getting involved. It'll be a nice experience. And they ended up ranking in like the top 3 because they created really cool, innovative things that were built in an asset-oriented way. And you think then you do the post-competition interview with them or something, like, oh, so how long have you been doing Scrypto for? And like, oh, 2 months. You're like, yeah, but how long was your programming career before? And they're like, oh no, I'm not a programmer. And you're like, wow, that is awesome. That is what gets more of those 27 million developers worldwide.
Well, it's not just the 27 million.
Oh, no,
at that point, it's not just the 27 million. Like the point, like the things, Web3 and DeFi is going to be around for decades. Right? And like, it's the people who are first touching code, giving them that opportunity, like to get involved in the white space of Web3 and DeFi, giving them that easy on-ramp. That's so exciting. To me, that's so exciting. Like, we're the old guys. We're the old guys, but like...
Speak for yourself, man.
But like the next generation who's coming up, giving them that new set of opportunity, giving them that opportunity to access what is the biggest opportunity since the creation of the internet. Like, Web3 and DeFi is going to be for them what the internet was for you.
Yeah, but I think there's another element that's really valuable for people who are in the community and the token holders that we represent is, you know, if we're spending a couple $1,000s to get these DEXs and lending and all these capabilities, and you look at some of the ecosystem funds out there that are spending a lot of money and not getting any value for it, you know, where do you want to get your return on your network investment, basically? So I think for the long-term growth of the ecosystem and the community and all the people surrounded, the knowledge that you can get viable products for low cost, you know, low fast time to market with people who have relatively new experience but production grade, that's a powerful combination.
And that extra security guarantee, which, you know, like, to be completely, you know, transparent, Scrypto and the Radix engine has not yet been tested, you know, on a public network, right? We haven't had any running applications on the public network, but the amount of work that we put into baking in that asset behavior into the Radix engine, looking at what kind of hacks have happened and how much harder it is even to like shoot yourself in the foot in the first place, I think really does bode well for how much securer these applications are going to be, how much quicker it's going to be. And you know, one of the things I'm sure we'll go into more detail with Matt and Russell is this idea of even if Scrypto compiles, you're like 90% of the way there. You know, like if it works the first time it compiles, then you have these guarantees around whether or not asset behavior is correct and all this kind of stuff.
A really big one for me on that though is it's not just about the actual security, it's about the feeling of security for the user base of these dApps. And as a developer, as an entrepreneur on Radix, you get some things for free that are staggeringly powerful. Things like guardrails. So anyone who's familiar with Uniswap and having to input the amount of slippage you want to accept, that's built in with guardrails in the Radix wallet. Getting a UI where your users feel confident that what they're doing on there is actually the outcome that they expect. Again, build that, but the Radix wallet with the transaction manifest shows your users. All that is free power you can leverage of the Radix stack, and only possible with the full stack.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this goes back to one of the key competitive differentiators is, like I said, we started with that $400 trillion market in mind and worked backwards. So when we talk about security being baked in and all these kind of components, and we've been doing this for a long time, not because we're slow, but because we're really focused on doing it right, playing the long game, and creating the platform that is going to support a global financial system. I mean, you know, that's just good stuff, but we have to take care of, we have to do the, you know, to borrow an American football analogy, the blocking and tackling. These things are critical and we have not, and we refuse to compromise on them.
So I think that's hugely exciting. And I think sort of there's loads of reasons in there why developers and entrepreneurs are going to find success building on Radix. So thank you so much, Jeremy and Adam, always a pleasure. And thank you so much for watching.